Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to talk about how you prepare for your PhD viva, or depending on where you're based, you can also call it a PhD defense. This is a big milestone, so it's perfectly normal that you're going to be nervous for it. And I think everyone remembers the night before the viva what they were doing, and I remember that I just went to the cinema with a couple of my friends just to relax and to calm my nerves. So here is to 7 practical tips that actually helped me to prepare for it. The first tip is that remember you are the expert in the topic, and your supervisor might have said that a couple of times to you, but it is really true. These projects are very complex, they span multiple years, and you really have to dig into the literature to find your own niche. So remember, even though you might have examiners who you think are really the experts in the topic, you are the one that has been in charge of your own project. And you will know all the relevant papers related to what you were doing. So remember that, and hopefully that will make you feel better about answering the questions. The second tip is that you can't know everything. So even though before I said that you are the expert in the topic, your thesis is going to be over 100 pages, well, a lot more than that actually. And it has so many details in it, and they can literally pick up on any detail or ask some theory. So what you have to understand when you go into the viva, it's absolutely normal that you're not going to be able to respond to every single detail. So see the viva as an opportunity to clarify some of these things and to have a useful discussion with your examiners. What usually helps when you go into these vivas is that they ask a leading question on how to kind of summarize your results, or I've also heard a question before when someone was asking to explain why you thanked certain people for helping you with the work. So remember that you can prepare for this type of question, so make sure that you have a summary ready for the work you want to talk about. And then hopefully once you've answered your first question, that will help to settle your nerves. The third tip is definitely ask for a mock viva. Your supervisor will probably offer this, and it might seem really daunting, and it's difficult to do that with people you know really well because it's not the same as being in an exam setting. And it will really depend on country what the format of this particular viva is. So in the UK you usually have one internal, one external examiner, so it usually tend to be 2 people, and maybe you have a chair just to make sure that it runs smoothly. So whereas I did my PhD viva in Belgium where you can have like 8 or 9 or even 10 different examiners. So it will be very different. So when you do this mock viva, you'll be used to the format that you're going to go through. So everyone in the UK is going to get some revisions after the viva, whereas when I did it in Belgium, it tends to be before. So if you familiarize yourself with the procedure, then it really helps to understand what this outcome actually means. The fourth tip is to really practice with people. So it depends on whether you have to do like a little lay summary, which you can practice with some of your friends or some of your family, but ask your support network for advice. Ask them to summarize your PhD thesis for them in an understandable way. Because be aware that some of your examiners might have expertise from one particular part of your project, but don't necessarily understand all the aspects that you covered in your project. It can also really help to talk to postdoctoral researchers, because they have gone through this process. So maybe better compared to your friends, they actually know what you're going through, so what you're going to get, and just hearing about their experience might help you to prepare yourself for your viva. Then the fifth tip is to ask people to help you with questions. So what I did when I was getting ready for my viva, I asked someone who was a little bit familiar with the project, but kind of outside of this field, just to read through it and see if he had any particular questions to help with. And some of them actually came up in the viva afterwards. So sometimes you don't realize it, but some of the questions that you're going to get about particular graphs or about your presentations are very logical. The sixth tip is to be prepared for what's going to come for you. Well, that's easier said than done really, isn't it? But you can prepare yourself for some of the practical aspects. So make sure it depends on obviously whether your viva is going to be in person or whether it's going to be online. So if it is at the university, make sure that you know well in advance where the room is. It sometimes even helps to go to the room in advance if you need to do a presentation, that you can practice with all of the equipment that you got here, and that you have an idea for the layout of the room where you're going to sit and where you feel more comfortable. Definitely bring a copy of your thesis when you go to your viva, and you can stick lots of notes in there. So when people ask you questions, it's really easy when you kind of just go through your thesis, because you can pick up on these things and it will make the process a little bit easier. Because these vivas can take really long, Usually there will be at least water provided or some drinks, sometimes some lunch depending on the timing of the viva. But in any case, I would recommend to bring some water yourself or to ask what's going to be available for you. And you are entitled to a short break if it does run on for a very long time, and your chair or your internal examiner will tell you when this break is coming up. The 7th tip is to try and enjoy yourself. Even though it might not seem like it, I heard from a lot of people after their viva that I actually really enjoyed the experience. Because remember, this is a project that's taken multiple years in order to complete. So you really have that sense of pride of what you've accomplished in that time. And within your viva, you actually have the opportunity to have a discussion with people who know a lot about the topic. So you can really get your opinions across and have a very useful discussion. So the comments of the examiner in general are not there to trip you up. They are really there to improve your thesis. So take those comments on board, make the corrections, and then you will see it probably improves the quality of the work afterwards. So here were my main tips for how to prepare for a PhD viva, which is very different than preparing for an interview, and it's really a once-in-a-life experience. And if you're doing your PhD and you've got other queries about topics that you're not so familiar with, then have a look at some of the rest of the playlist where we, for instance, talk about how to write your first research paper.